welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherrilyn and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. I missed you guys last week. I have so much going on right now, so much, but it's actually now, this is like the last week where everything is going to settle down and I can be back to regular scheduled uploading program. Today's riddle is: I'm not a blanket, yet I cover the ground. A crystal from heaven that doesn't make a sound. What am I? All right, okay. Okay, today we are talking about a woman that I came across on TikTok. Her name on there is Kenna Renee. She stopped me in my tracks. I was like, I love you. I have to share your story of survival and send some Sippin over to you to continue following. She survived an attempted murder by her own mom. If that's not bad enough, it was on Christmas Day and she was 10 years old. Okay, so we're going to get into that. Before we do, though, I have a quick message for you. Thank you to today's sponsor, Kitsch. If you don't know who Kitsch is, they are proud to be recognized as a self-financed, female-owned global accessory brand. Their vision is to make elevated accessories that are exciting to buy, excellent quality, and available at attainable price points. And I would have to personally agree, just based on my experience. I have already been a Kitsch supporter. Prior to partnering with them, I bought myself, my mom, my oldest daughter, the heatless hair curler, which I didn't realize how much I was going to miss. After we did the old chop, I'm like, I keep looking at it in my drawer and I'm like, oh, we will be reunited one more time. So when they reached out to me about trying their new rice water protein shampoo and conditioner bar, I was definitely willing to give the first time I tried solid bars a go because it was with them. I've never used solid bars before, and now I think I'm converted. I just had this preconceived assumption that because my hair is so thick, like it wouldn't saturate or lather my hair. But I'm telling you, like for me, I apply it directly to my hair. They say that you can lather it in your hands and then apply it to your hair. But I just take that little beauty and I just rub it all over my hair. And I cannot believe how clean it feels and how well it lathers. Right now, not only am I on a hair growth journey, but I've recently gone from dark to light. And if you've done that before, you know that hair care and just like babying your hair is so important after the lightening process. So prior to using the bars, I had heard about how good rice water was and wanted to try it. So that in itself was a really big selling point for me to just give it a go. Now, rice water is known to help repair damaged hair follicles and also prevent split ends. It cleans and conditions the hair, scalp, and encourages just overall hair growth, length, and density. And I've also noticed how already only after a few washes, less frizzy my hair is. I'm in between like wavy and curly hair. So if I don't blow dry it, which I've been trying to avoid for like the past year, it does get a little frizzy, and then consequently, I'll have to put some heat on it, which I don't like to. And I've just like, I've like done nothing with this at all. So you can see a little bit of the curl or wave underneath here, but it feels so soft, which is surprising because I just got it lightened like a few weeks ago. Kitsch bars are also free of phthalates, parabens, silicones, and sulfates. On top of that, the solid bar form is meant to help reduce single-use plastic. So not only can you feel good about helping your hair, but also the environment. If you want to check them out, you can use the link in my description to get 25% off your first order, which is a great deal because they have so many cute hair accessories like trendy clips, hair towels, heatless curl systems, shave bars. They also have a subscription option for an even better discount. And they ship internationally to over 27 countries, which I love because if you are outside of the States, you know how disappointing it can be when you find something you really want to try and then you're like, oh, they don't ship here. So once again, if you want to try them out, you can use the link in my description to get 25% off your first order. Thank you so much, Kitsch, for sponsoring today's video and for helping my hair feel Fabulous. Okay, so backstory. Kenna showed up on my For You page on TikTok when she was doing, you know, when Susie Stitch videos were going around like crazy. I miss Susie Stitch so much. Actually, I'm really glad that like Risatisa came out, because then she's kind of like took a Susie Stitch situation where people could talk about like a wild story. And then she just like elaborated and went so crazy. So that's how Kenna's started, was Susie Stitch. She just did a brief version of it on TikTok, and then obviously so many people had questions. And then when Risatisa did her, how many parts did she do? Like 60 or something like that? No, I think it was like 40, 30. I don't know. Don't come here for facts. Usually yes, but not today. So then Kenna did one and did like a multi-part series going through what actually happened. So we're going to talk about it and then also just like listen to her, because she's just like, she's so inspiring, even just from her Cliff's Note version of the Susie Stitch. Obviously you're just like, girl, we have questions. What's going on? And that actually encouraged her, inspired her to revisit and just kind of investigate things years later, being like, oh, yeah, this was really, really messed up. And so her story and her voice have become so powerful. I think not only just because of what happened to her that day, but it touches a lot of aspects that I think people can relate to, aside from the fact that her mom tried to take her life. There's a lot of other layers there, and just the way that she grew up, huge lessons, and I think warning signs for others to just prevent something like this from happening to another child. So if you haven't heard of her or seen her story before, I know you're going to be as touched as I was, and want to go and send her love. So that's the goal today. All right, we're going to let Kenna walk through this though, and we'll start with part one of her saying why she wanted to kind of do a deep dive here.
All right, guys, I'm gonna share the story of how my mom tried to murder me. And before you all come at me, this is my journey and my story, and so the way that I retell it and everything, I've had a lot of years to process. I've had a lot of years of therapy, so yeah, sometimes things make me emotional, sometimes things don't, but like, it's just my story. So this is my normal. And I am coming to terms with the fact that it is totally not normal to a majority of society. So prefacing with that, also, if you want the shorter condensed version, I did a Susie Stitch a few months ago. You might have seen it, you might not have, but if you want to see it, you can go to my page and just click the pin video. If you want the longer version with all the details, it's going to be slower, it's going to be long-winded, so buckle up. We can like podcast style this, but I've never done like a full story time of it, so I just thought that since it kind of blew up again, it'd be time. Okay, so basically, let's just backtrack and say that I have a big blended family. One thing I'm not going to do is to speak on behalf of any of my siblings, although I do have 3 older brothers and a little sister. I have my sister and my brother on my mom's side and 2 brothers on my dad's side. That's kind of like the gist of our big blended family. I'm not going to speak on their behalf because I respect them and I honor their privacy, but a lot of people have asked like if I have siblings, what they think, all that stuff. I'm just not going to talk on that because that's their story to tell, and this is my story to tell. So basically, I had my 3 older brothers. They are all 6 to 8 years older than me, and that was when my parents got together, and I'm the only one from my parents. So they got pregnant, they got married when my mom was pregnant with me, and then got divorced like all within basically a year. Then they lived in 2 separate states, so I always traveled back and forth. And really my mom was like my best friend. I didn't realize how codependent that relationship was until many years later and a lot of therapy, but but honestly, she was my best friend. Like, we did everything together. I had great birthdays. I got to get my nails done. Like, I did all of the girly things. We always had like traditions for my birthday, all of the things. I was her only daughter, so like for the first 7.5 years of my life. So I was just like, I don't know, I was just a girl, a mommy's girl for sure. After my sister was born, my mom definitely started changing. She got into DREGS. I don't know if I can say that, but she got into drugs, and just kind of started changing, definitely dealing with depression and anxiety, and she would have panic attacks, and like our world kind of shifted from her being a working mom and being involved in all of the things. She was my soccer coach. She was, you know, she'd come to all my practices, all of that kind of stuff. It shifted from that to her staying in bed for a long time, me having to get up and line her medicine in the morning and give it to her to hope that she would get out of bed. My world kind of flipped upside down. I kind of said this in another video, but I became the caretaker of my sister, and my brother was the caretaker of both of us. So my brother was in high school, I was in 4th grade, and my sister was like 2 at the time. And so I would be cooking and cleaning. Benny, it's my dog, hold on. I just want to give you like an overview of kind of how the dynamic shifts, because I think that that's a big question that a lot of people have. Like, was she a normal mom before? Was she like, what was your dynamic like? Like, it was a completely normal life. And that's why everybody outside and around us would never have guessed that something like this would happen, because we were like the light of her life. But of course, when the drugs came in, it totally shifted, and I started to become responsible for a lot of things that no 4th grader should be responsible of, as well as my brother being responsible for like taking and picking us up from school and stuff like that, or me up from school. And I'm not sure if my sister was going to daycare at the time, but it was kind of like we were running the house and she was just there. She would have these crazy panic attacks, and my grandma would have to take her to the hospital. Sometime I would come with, but it was just a really, really unhealthy environment. I remember my grandfather living outside in like this trailer or like RV in our driveway, and sometimes she would send me to go get medicine from him. And like, obviously as a child, I'm thinking medicine is just like from a doctor, so if a doctor prescribed it, it's fine. But I had no idea the gravity of the situation, and that she was abusing benzodiazepines and opioids. So that's kind of the backstory of that. It got really, really bad when, like, about that time. So this would be December of 2006. I could tell her addiction was really bad. Right before that, there was just a lot going on. I was basically marked truant and absent and tardy a lot of the time at school, which again, I was in 4th grade, so I had no control over that. That was obviously my parental figure's responsibility. However, I started to get in trouble. They started to give me detention and stuff for not actually like being at school on time and stuff. And I had a friend's mom actually have to go in there and talk to administration, because they had to say like, this is not McKenna's fault. And I was very studious. So like the way that I dealt with trauma is like control, and poured it all into like being the teacher's pet and doing everything right and getting straight A's, because I felt like the more that I did and the more that I controlled the things around me that I could, that my situation would get better. And even at such a young age, subconsciously, the fact that that's how I dealt with my trauma is kind of crazy. But that ended up manifesting for years and years, until I have been trying to like work on that, because that's not normal. But anyway, that's just a little side note. So I had a friend's mom come in there and be like, she is 10. She can't get herself to school. If she's not getting to school, there's a bigger issue here. So that was kind of like the peak of things getting really bad. She was not leaving the house. She was not doing anything. I would like beg her to go to church. I would beg her to take me to school. Like, I just wanted her to be my mom again. And I remember conversations that we would have, like, I just want my mama back. I just want things to be better. Like, I want you to feel good. And I remember her saying like, well, I'm going to go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to figure out what medicine's going to work. And so we were always talking about like the doctors figuring out better medicine to make her feel better, which I didn't realize at the time she was actually pill shopping. And if anyone knows kind of like the rise of the early 2000s and prescription pain medicine, there was a big issue because there was not a lot of regulation. So people could go into go to different doctors and use different names and kind of like pill shop. So all of the prescriptions she would have would be under different names. So they would have just maybe her first name and her middle name, or her first, middle, and last name, and then her first, middle, and previous last name from a different marriage, and vice versa. So she had all of these different prescriptions that were all under different names, which raises the question of why none of these doctors were put on the stand during my trial, because obviously they should have been questioned as to, this is the same person, you know that this is the same person, so why are you writing these different prescriptions under different names? Primarily it was one doctor that was writing a lot of these prescriptions in a small town, so he knew what he was doing and he never got questioned, but that's a little side note. If you guys see back here, like our prescription, like our medicine cabinet was basically the entire, like 3 cabinets that we had in our kitchen at the time. So she had access to a lot of different benzodiazepine, opioids, all of this stuff. Okay, so now that we got the little backstory of kind of like what my household looked like, what life was like during that time period, and how it was completely normal before, let's jump into the story and we'll go to part 2.
Okay, absolutely wild. My one note that I had on this was, bless the heart of the friend's mother who went into the administration, because I have so many questions for the school. Like, why are we putting a 10-year-old in detention for missing school when it's like the parents' responsibility to get her there? And this, like, for the friend's mom to go in and be like, there's a bigger picture here. Like, we have concerns. Like, let's not punish her. Yeah, probably should have been the first thought for the school. Not blaming the school for what happened, but I'm just saying, like, in this situation in general, it's a little bit of a red flag that she's missing school. Not her fault. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so let's just get into basically that day. So my parents had shared custody of me, so every other holiday I would go back and forth. My dad lived in Idaho, my mom lived in Washington. So that year I went to Idaho to stay with my dad for Christmas. He was kind of going through a separation with my stepmom at the time, which was just kind of a weird situation, but we still spent Christmas with them at my old stepmom's house. So we stayed there, we woke up, we were opening presents. It was like a big old thing. And my stepsister and I opened up our present and we got a trip to Disneyland. We were stoked. I was so excited. And like I said, my mom was my best friend. If you didn't see part 1, go to part 1. But my mom was my best friend. So I was so excited. I told my dad, I'm like, I have to call mom and I have to tell her that I got a trip to Disneyland, which my mom and my dad just have never had a cordial relationship. So I really don't think that he told her before that he was going to take us on this trip. I don't think they coordinated. I don't know that for a fact, so I'm not going to say that like factually, but just context clues, don't think she knew about it. So when I called her on the phone, I was so excited. I'm like, Mom, guess what I got from Dad? I got a camera, which is ironic because I'm a photographer now, and I got a trip to Disneyland, and Callie and I get to go, and it's going to be so amazing. And I thought that she would be super, super, super excited for me, but she wasn't. She basically was immediately irritated and told me that she would talk about it with me and think about it and to not get too excited because she doesn't know if I was going to be able to go. And at 10 years old, that really upset me because I'm like, why wouldn't I be able to go to Disneyland? What's going on? Then we get off the phone. I'm kind of like, my mood's a little shifted. I get a call back from my mom and she basically said, hey honey, if you want to wait another day, you can stay at your dad's house and you can come home tomorrow, because it was Christmas Day that I was supposed to fly back and go to her. And I'm like, my dad was like, that wouldn't even make sense. It would cost more money. Like, you're just going to go back today. So I'm like, okay, I'll go back. I had a bit of a toothache, but I didn't really pay any mind to it because I hate medicine and I don't like taking it. So I didn't really want to say anything to my dad. So I packed up all my stuff, regardless of what was going on and the fact that it was Christmas, and I got on a plane to go back to Washington. Mind you, we are living in Port Angeles at the time, my mom. So when she comes to pick me up in Seattle, I fly in I fly alone. I flew alone a lot back then, and she would have to pick me up, and then we'd have to travel another 2.5 hours back to Port Angeles from Seattle. So she picks me up. Everything's good. I'm so excited. I'm excited because we're planning to have Christmas with my brother and my sister on my mom's side the next day. So I'm like really excited to just get home, show her my new PJs, get in bed, wake up, and see all my siblings. On the way from the airport to Port Angeles, my mom's like asking me questions about like my stepmom, asking me like questions about how my trip was, and it's kind of a gray area, but from what I've seen in my interrogation, then I started having my toothache again, and I'm telling her like my tooth really hurts, it really hurts, and she's like, you know what, if you just lay your head down on the console, I'll get you medicine when we get home. I'm like, okay, great. I remember we didn't have much conversation after that. We get home and I get in my PJs and I hop in her bed. At this point, I was still like co-sleeping with my mom a lot, which hindsight, still very codependent, and I didn't realize that at the time, but I always slept in her bed with her. And so I got my PJs on, I got in her bed, and then she went in to take a bath. From what I remember her being on the phone and like for a bit, and I came out and I'm like, you know what, I don't really have a toothache, I don't really need medicine, because again, I hated taking medicine. And she was like, McKenna, get out of the room, I need you to like go back to our room and I'm gonna get you medicine anyway, which I was really reluctant because I hated taking medicine. So I tried to just fall asleep. Then I started getting anxious, I remember, and I go back out because now she's on the computer and she's typing something. And like, it's been a long time since we've been home now. And I'm like, no, mom, I'm just gonna go to bed. Like, I don't need the medicine. She's like, McKenna, get in the bed right now and I'm gonna bring you medicine. And I did see in like the distance, there was 2 cups of water, or what looked like water to me, on the kitchen counter kind of behind her. But she didn't want me to come and look at whatever she was writing on the computer. So my mom scared me, so I went back in. I just didn't want to get in trouble. I went back in the room and I just laid there, and then she came in and brought the glass of what I saw on the counter, but it was like really like murky. I could see like pills floating in it, which at the time I thought it was Alka-Seltzer. She told me that I had to drink the entire thing. It was probably like a short glass. Yeah, it was a short glass filled almost to the top, and I could see all the floating pieces. Like I said, I thought it was Alka-Seltzer, and I took 1 sip and it tasted horrible. You know that like powdery taste that you get from medicine if you leave it on your tongue for too long? It was that times like 1,000. It was horrible. So I'm like gagging taking this, and I'm sitting in the bed. She's sitting on the corner of the bed, or like the edge of the bed. And she's like, you just really have to drink that. Keep drinking it. You have to drink it all. I'm like, I thought it was just for my toothaches, and I just thought my mom was trying to help me. So I just kept trying to choke it down. Eventually I was like, this is really bad. I don't think I can drink it all. So she got me a Capri Sun. It was like a grape Capri Sun, and she poured the contents of that into the drink so that it would try to taste better, and it just made it worse. But I ended up finishing it all, and I drank literally every ounce of it. After that, I just remember her saying like, good job, and me laying back down, and I don't remember anything else. The next thing I remember was waking up in the Seattle Children's Hospital a few days later.
So just to keep the flow of the story, she did release the 911 call. So we'll listen to it now, and then we'll go back just so like I guess we could kind of see how things were unfolding behind the scenes when she didn't even know, because she wakes up days later in the hospital. So this was the 911 call that came through to get authorities to come to the house and save her life. Trigger warning, this is a 911 call. We've talked about this before, where they can just in themselves be triggering. Obviously, this is even harder when you're understanding that this call is coming in because of a beautiful 10-year-old little girl. So if that's triggering to you, just skip forward past this call.
So I have listened to this 911 call probably a handful of times. I have shared it with a couple of the people closest to me, but I think I'm finally ready to share it with the world. If you guys haven't ever seen my story, if you didn't see my first viral Susie Stitch, or you haven't ever seen me on TikTok, when I was 10 years old, on Christmas Day, my mother tried to take my life. There's a lot of layers to this story, and I'm doing my best as I continue to uncover basically all of the evidence kind of in real time. I'm trying to relay it to you guys so you can kind of like come on this journey with me. So if you're interested in that, you can follow along or just listen to this video. It's going to be 2 parts. The 911 call is about 7 minutes long, so I'm going to break it up into 2 parts. And I'm also going to kind of debrief because it's kind of hard to not know all of the aspects of the case, but we're just going to like kind of go through it step by step. I will preface by saying, if you haven't listened to it, my mother gave me a concoction of medicine that ended up poisoning me, and I was life-flighted to Seattle Children's Hospital and given 3 Narcan reversals. I was in a coma for a couple of days and was finally able to be revived. At the time that the investigators found me at the crime scene, I was unable to be resuscitated. So my life truly is a miracle. Sorry, I'm getting kind of emotional. It comes in waves. Although there was a lot of defense during the trial that she was trying to take her own life too, and you're gonna hear in the 911 call that she isn't all there. I think it's really important to note that my mother was taking a lot of substances that made her incoherent on a day-to-day basis. She was struggling with her own addiction, and I have to kind of be careful with my words with what I share on here because some of my videos have gotten disqualified, but she was really active in her own addiction. So what the amount she took was something that her body could take, and she walked out of the house. Now, a lot of people are a little bit confused. She was the one to call 911. So she came out of her manic, or she realized that I was still alive. I don't know exactly the reasoning for it, but she did call 911 hours later. They estimate that I took the concoction of medicine at about 10:30, and there were 5 or 6 pill bottles empty on the counter, and she called around 2:30. So there's many hours, and like I said, I was unable to be resuscitated at the time that they found me. So I will pull, while I'm playing the 911 call, I'll put a couple of the crime scene videos or pictures as well. So yeah, here goes nothing. I'm also gonna skip through if there are any names just for protection purposes, besides my own. All right, here it goes.
911 emergency?
Yes, I need somebody. My father and I just took a lot of pills.
Who took the pills?
My daughter and I.
You both took a lot of pills?
Yeah.
Deliberately?
Like over 50.
What kind of pills were they?
I think I'm gonna skip through that part because I don't think that I can share that on here. Hold on.
Okay, how old's your daughter?
10.
She took them as well?
Yeah.
And how old are you?
41.
21?
41.
41. Did you guys take these deliberately?
Yeah, we did. Yes.
Okay.
I can't move my body right now, and I'm really scared for her.
Okay, is she able to talk to you? Is she conscious?
No.
She's not conscious?
No.
Where is she now?
She's in bed with me.
Okay, and is she there with you right now? Can you see her?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to get the paramedics on the way over there. I'll be right back with you. Don't hang up, okay?
Okay, would you wait? My front door, I can't move my body, so my front door is locked.
Your front door is locked?
But my back door is not.
The back door is open, okay. Okay, I'll be right back with you. Don't hang up, okay?
Okay.
There's 613 West 4th 14th, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We've dispatched the paramedics, okay? Now, until they get there, if I can keep you on the phone, that'd be great. Can you, is there anybody else there in the house with you?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, well, how long ago did your daughter take those pills?
We both took them about, what time is it right now?
It's 2:05, right? 2:06 right now.
At 10:30.
At 10:30? Okay. How long has she been unconscious?
Well, she just went to sleep, so I checked her heart and her breathing, and she's still doing that.
She's still breathing?
Yeah.
Oh, no, hydrocodone, 4 different kinds of medication she's in. All right, can you get the phone? The phone is near her, right? You're right near your daughter right now. She's right there with you. Would you do me a favor and make sure she's still breathing?
Yeah, I just checked it 2 minutes ago.
Okay, is she on a bed or on the floor or a chair? Where is she?
On the bed.
On the bed? Okay, would you tilt her head back, please? Is she lay her on her back?
Yeah.
Says she. Good. Okay, is she on her back now?
Yeah.
Can you tilt her head back for me, please?
What do you mean?
Tilt her head back so her airway is open. Can you do that for me, please?
Yeah.
Okay, she is still breathing. Okay.
I can't move.
You can't move?
I can't move.
10:30. How long have you put on something? No, I can't.
But she did. I took the dog food and some juice for her and gave them to her. She just got back from her dad's tonight and he's really abusive and everything, and I just snapped. Not really like this, but I just snapped, and I don't control myself.
Is this house in the alley?
No. It's on the front.
Okay.
If you walk to the back, the motion light come on.
Rhonda, what color? Is this Rhonda?
Yeah.
What color is your house?
It's gray.
Gray? Okay.
With blue trim.
With blue trim.
Yeah.
613 West 14th.
Yeah.
Okay, I have officers there now. We're going to try to get you some help, Rhonda. Stay on the phone with me, okay?
I don't know if I can.
Well, if you can, please do that. Are you on the bed as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you sitting down? Laying down?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, stay with me.
She doesn't know that she took them because I just took some awesome and pop.
She doesn't know how many she took? Or you?
She doesn't know she took them.
Oh, she doesn't know she took them. Did you put them in something and she took them that way?
Right here. Right, no, right here. Yes, it's here right now.
There's some officers there now?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm going to let you go then.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Sometimes I get emotional listening to it, and sometimes I don't. But when I think about, like when I see this picture, and I look at how, like, little I was, and how impressionable, and, like, how I just trusted my mother with, like, my whole life, you never think that, like, as a kid, you have to be worried about that. And, like, when I hear her say over and over, like, she doesn't know she took them, she doesn't know she took them. It just like brings me back to her taking them or giving them to me. And I remember it was so disgusting and like it tasted so bad, and I was like, please don't make me take this. And she was like, it's okay, it's gonna make you feel better. Like she just kept reassuring me that like I would feel better. So it's really hard to like hear that and just know that I was just a child. And like I see 10-year-olds now and I'm just like, they're just babies and they just have all the trust and innocence in the world. And like how horrible it is that someone could use their authority and like blind trust to hurt a kid. It's just beyond me. Okay, I'm gonna get it together here. Okay, another part of this whole thing is that, like in the call, she said, like, I can't move, I can't, like, she wasn't able to, like, move my head, and, like, you can tell she's really messed up, but a really important part of this is that she walked out of the house. Clearly, I was not okay. And like, if you guys saw in that photo, like my whole arm was super red, like I was losing circulation. Like I said in the probable cause, I'll read that next in the next part. But I was unable to be resuscitated. So like I wasn't breathing how I was supposed to be. And they had to take me out on a stretcher and life flight me to Seattle Children's, which was 2.5 hours away from where we lived. And she walked out of the house. So she was able to move, she was able to function. And while she did have medication in her system, it wasn't anywhere near the amount that I had, especially for her who was taking that kind of medication every day. And for me, who was 10 years old and was taking over 50 pills. I'm gonna show you guys some other pictures from the crime scene. Oh, there's a cop outside my apartment. So this was our house that we were living in. So like you can see the quality of photos is not going to be very good, but this was our house. The lights were already on, which is interesting. This was our like living room and dining room area. There's a phone right here, but she must have had one also in the bedroom, I assume. These are the last will and testament. She had 2 copies printed here. I'm covering up some names on this, but this was another copy of the last will and testament. This was left in our kitchen, on our computer table, and she left another copy here, which I do have a copy of this, and I will be reading it as well. It's just a little tricky because I do have to leave out names, and I do still want to protect some people's privacy. These were all the medications that were left. This was our kitchen, like our countertops. So all of these prescription medications were filled within 20 days, and they were all empty when they came to the crime scene. This was also another photo of our computer table. This is where she was like sitting when I kept coming in and out before she gave me the medicine, so I knew she was working on her computer. Other court documents say that she was still working on the computer and printed it after she had already given me the medication. So we didn't take the medication at the same time. This is kind of a blurry photo of me that they took when they were taking me out. I don't know if you guys could hear in the 911 call too, but she said I just snapped. I couldn't control myself. So that was a huge part of the case.
So when police arrived, they're unable to revive Kenna. There are also videos that she's shown from the police body cam. And when they realize they can't get a response from her, she's life-flighted to Seattle Children's Hospital. Her mother was able to walk out to the ambulance, be able to be treated. And Kenna was, we'll find out later, she was given 3 Narcan reversals in a coma for a couple days. Like, this is an absolute miracle that she woke up.
I was laying there and I remember like coming to consciousness, and I remember looking down. My dad was holding my hand, which made me really confused because I had just left my dad. Like, I thought I just was waking up the next day. And I look over and it's this huge white room. Like, it's probably the entirety of my apartment. My dad's there. There's cops outside, and I just see all of the IVs and stuff in my arm. Like, I couldn't really move, and I felt super, super, super heavy. Mind you, I'm 10 years old at the time. So, like, look over at my dad, and I remember him saying, like, hi, baby, like, and just starting to cry. And I was just really, really confused at what was happening. And I remember nurses coming in, and then I remember a police officer coming in and starting to question me, like, almost immediately. So basically my dad wasn't allowed to be in the room with me unless the officers were also in the room. Like, none of my family was able to be with me. So majority of the time when I was in the hospital, unless the police officers were escorting my family, I wasn't allowed to see them. And so I was alone a lot of the time, or with the nurses. And at this point, nobody was telling me like what was going on. I just thought I had like a bad reaction to the medicine or something. But I remember not even realizing what I was there for or where I was. I didn't understand that I was in Seattle at the Children's Hospital. Every time I kept asking people questions, they weren't answering me. And looking back now, they're obviously not giving me any answers because they want my memory word for word when I have to be interrogated. So I was kind of interrogated in the hospital, but also when I was released. So they weren't telling me anything. They didn't want like me really speaking with anyone because they wanted whatever my memory was. They wanted that when they did their initial interviews of me, to try to figure out what happened. I didn't know where my mom was. I thought something happened to my mom too. So I'm like, where is my mom? I have Christmas today. Like, like, what are we supposed to do? I'm supposed to just wake up and see my siblings. Like, I was so confused. I had no concept of what had actually happened or how I even got to Seattle in the first place.
So the concoction of medicine that she was given around like 10:30, there were 5 to 6 bottles that were empty on the counter. And according to the court documents, the cocktail that she was given included 20 to 100 crushed tablets of an assortment of prescribed medication. So there was lorazepam, clonazepam, trazodone, which are all central nervous system antidepressants. And then there was hydrocodone, which is like a pain-killing narcotic. It makes me sick to even say that out loud. And I just look at my babies and I'm like, how the F? We're going to let Kenna continue on with her story and just talk about what that experience was like for her after the fact, because I think so many of us don't think about this, right? Like, we hear about what happened, and then next we just like, life kind of goes for a couple of years while you're waiting for trial. Trial doesn't happen like the next day. There's usually like a couple year gap. So for her, there was so much that was playing out and confusing for her. Like, she had to stay with a foster family briefly. She explains that was really, traumatizing and confusing for her. Also, not grasping what was going on and still really wanting to protect her mom.
So at this point, I have no idea that I was life-flighted to the Seattle Children's Hospital. I have no idea how I got there. I have no idea how long I had to stay. I have no idea what day it is. I'm just kind of like in a daze. Nurses are coming in and out. They're just trying to check my vitals, trying to make sure that everything's okay. And once I was like stable and everything was fine, they ended up releasing me. But the problem is I couldn't be released to family members because now it was an open investigation of what the heck happened. So I was going to be sent to a foster family. So at this point, I have been assigned a social worker. She shows up. I have to pick from this black plastic bag of hospital clothes that don't fit. I have nothing. They say you have to pick clothes that you want to wear out of here. And then the social worker was going to transport me from the Seattle Children's Hospital to Port Angeles to a foster family that I had never seen before. I remember immediately breaking down and crying because nobody was answering my questions. I was a pretty mature 10-year-old at that point, so I could comprehend things. And I think that's also the reason why they didn't want to tell me exactly what was going on, because I probably would have freaked out even more. But I remember going with the social worker. We were driving back to Port Angeles and I really started asking her questions, and she just kept saying, I don't know, no, you're not going to be able to see your mom. I'm like, where is she? Where is she? Like, I was so concerned with where she was, and they said that she had gone to the hospital too, but besides that, they weren't telling me anything. And that's when she told me that I wasn't going to be able to have Christmas with my brother and sister, and that I wasn't going to be going home, and I had a mental breakdown. I remember screaming at her. I was so confused. I was like, I don't want to go to a foster family. I don't want to stay with strangers. We get to the foster family's house, and it was just so scary. If you've ever been in the foster care system, I only had to deal with it for this time and this placement, but it is just so terrifying as a child because you're so used to like your environment and your people, and you're being thrown in to stay at a house with strangers that you don't know. And the people that I stayed with had a totally different culture than me, and so they had like birds flying around in their house, which I still don't like birds to this day. They cooked super spicy food. It was just like very, very different than what I was used to. And so they didn't have TV, like they didn't have any toys. I just basically stayed in my room, or the room that they had me in, and basically cried for a couple of days until they could figure out everything on the back end with the court and the legal system and where I was going to be placed next. Again, I still have no idea what's going on. But at this point, I'm kind of like figuring out, like, I think my mom's in trouble and I don't know why, and I need to help her. So that next day I go into the police department and they conduct their initial interrogation of me, which at some point I'm trying to get access to. It's about 2 hours of an interrogation video, which I would love to share with you guys also, because it's very, very interesting, and very interesting to watch yourself in an interrogation room and like remember certain bits and pieces of that, but then also to watch it and like see it unfold. They asked me all sorts of questions about the relationship between my mother and my father and my stepmother. They asked me play-by-play of what happened that day, the conversations that I had, and I just kept asking them, where is my mom? Are you going to tell me what's happening? Are you going to let me ask you questions? And they were very, very careful not to tell me anything, other than the fact that I couldn't see her. Basically, what's really sad is that the entire time that I was being interrogated, I was defending my mom. I was saying, I think it was Alka-Seltzer. That's what she gave me. I could see everything floating in it. I think the medicine was expired. I think that something happened. Like, I was just trying to defend her so that she wouldn't get in trouble, because I didn't understand the magnitude of like what actually had happened. And it's crazy to think that all of these adults around me knew exactly what was going on as they were conducting all their interrogations and the initial investigation, and then they're having to navigate how to tell me or not tell me certain details. I just couldn't imagine having to do that. But nonetheless, it's crazy. While I was with the foster family, this is when the court was happening for the custody battle. So my stepmom at the time, even though her and my dad were separated, they both flew into or came to Port Angeles. My aunt at the time, my grandmother, and I think that's all, but they were all in Port Angeles. They came from Boise. I'm not really sure if my uncle represented my dad or what that situation was like, but ultimately the court decided that my family in Washington wasn't going to be able to keep custody of me, any aunts, uncles, anyone related to my mother. So I was to be basically all my stuff was to be packed up, and my dad was getting custody. Even though at the time I wasn't going to go live with my dad because he was struggling with his own mental health and addiction, they didn't tell the courts that. So their plan was that I was going to live with my aunt and uncle at the time, and that I don't know what the plan was with my dad, but they just told everyone that I was going to go live with my dad. I am so grateful for my aunt and uncle though, because that was the best case scenario. The fact that I was taken out of my environment in my home and stripped away from my brother and sister and everything just within a matter of days, and having to just pack up, and I basically had a suitcase that I was able to take to Idaho, and then everything else was going to be shipped to me once the house was open after the investigation and they were able to take some of my stuff and ship it to me. But basically I had a suitcase, and that's all I was going to take. And I was just told that I was gonna go live in Idaho. And this was all during Christmas break. So that happened on Christmas Day, and throughout the next week, this is all of the stuff that they were like trying to figure out. And so basically I had to completely move states. I wasn't able to, I don't even remember saying goodbye to my sister. I got to see my brother once or twice, and then I was on a plane to Idaho and basically leaving. I never got to say bye to any of my friends from school, because before Christmas break, I was just like, okay, see you guys after Christmas break. And then after Christmas break, I lived in a completely different state and I started a brand new school, which at 10 years old is just crazy to me that I just had to start over and still had no understanding of like what was going on. People slowly started telling me things, like once I understood, I'm not gonna live with my mom anymore, this is really bad, she's gonna get in trouble, she did something not good. Like I still wasn't understanding the full, like I don't even know when the first time that I really understood that my mom tried to kill me, but I think it was a gradual process of people like slowly telling me bits and pieces of what actually happened on the back end. So yeah, that was that. Once school started again, I was at a new school. I was really excited because I was living with my cousin who we were just a few months apart. So I knew we were gonna go to the same school, and that was really exciting. And like they made it super fun for me, and they tried to just distract me from everything that was going on. But it was a really, really interesting time to transition from. And initially I had been put in like counseling. So my aunt would pick me up from school, and I don't remember how often it was, but I think I would go like once or twice a week, but I didn't go for very long. Like once they basically did play therapy. So they were like talking me through like, so do you know that your mom didn't mean to hurt you? That kind of thing. But it was kind of strange because that was the narrative. Like, well, your mom didn't mean, like, I was like, oh, my mom didn't mean to hurt me. And that's kind of the narrative we stuck with for a majority of like my super early memories of that, until I really started to understand that the gravity of like my mom tried to kill me. And there was a lot of medicine in there, and the intent was for me to no longer be there. But that came later because it took 2 years for the trial to happen, and I was called to testify. So from 4th grade to 6th grade, that was kind of like a long process of, okay, now you're starting to understand, and we're going to start to tell you more of the back end of like what happened. So that's when I started to understand that there was a homicide-suicide letter. That's when I started to understand that this was premeditated. And that's kind of when I started having to prep for the fact that I was going to be put on the stand. So from 4th to 6th grade, I lived with my aunt and uncle, and that was like some of the funnest times because I got to be with all my cousins, and my uncle was a lawyer, and so I feel like he approached it in a really healthy way. We would go on these family walks at night, and I would get to just talk with him and like ask him questions about things. And I feel like for the age that I was and the questions that I was having, he was really navigating that really well. Obviously it was really hard because I did have so many questions, and I think that he wanted to be careful of like what he said and how he said it, and to make sure that like emotionally it wasn't like hurting me a lot. But he did it in a really, really healthy way, and I really, really appreciate him for that. And he always had like a line of communication open, especially because I wasn't seeing my dad a lot during this time. He was really heavy in his addiction, and he also tried to take his own life twice during this time. So like I was still on the back end, like I didn't have two parents present, and him and my aunt really stepped in, and he navigated that whole situation like so much. I can't even thank him enough for all that he did and the person that he was during that time. At that point, I started to realize that my mom did try to harm me. And that was a lot of confusion because I didn't understand why. She was my best friend and my confidant, and I had to go completely no contact with her. And knowing that she was in jail or on house arrest was just the craziest thing. I feel like there were so many questions that I had that just didn't make sense. And I was really eagerly awaiting the trial, even though it took 2 years for it to happen. So by 6th grade, my dad got clean for about a year. He got remarried, and we all moved into a new house together. And this was when like trial prep was happening. So we got the date for when I was supposed to testify, and I was basically preparing myself for the fact that I was gonna have to go back to Port Angeles, and this was the first time that I was going to see my mom since everything happened. And I wasn't going to sit in on the trial, but I was gonna get paired with a social worker again who was gonna kind of debrief me on everything that the defense and the prosecution was gonna talk to me about. And this was kind of the first time that I was really, really understanding the depths of what was happening and the fact that she was being charged with both attempted murder and neglect of a child. So basically, my mother, she was trying to, her defense was that it was insanity. She was trying to do the insanity plea that she was mentally unstable during that time. However, there was a few things stacked against her. There was a lot of premeditation that was shown throughout this trial. So one of the most important facts was that a majority of the pill bottles that were given to me, which there were 5 pill bottles that were empty laying on the counter. I'm actually gonna add this in because I think it's just interesting. So, I guess there was 6. Okay, so this is a photo from some of the evidence that I just recently went to the courthouse to see. So these are all of the prescription pill bottles that were left on the counter that she gave to both her and I. A little side note is that during all this time, I knew that she took medicine too. I just didn't know how much, and I still don't know how much. Nobody knows how much, but basically she walked out of the house and was able to go in the ambulance. And the only thing that really saved her during the trial was that she called 911. Whether she came out of her manic episode and realized what she'd done and that I wasn't really breathing, or she realized that I was still breathing and that I wasn't actually going to die. Regardless of why she did it, she called 911. And I actually have a recording of the 911 call that I can also share too, because I think that's really interesting. I've only shared it once on one of my lives. But nonetheless, in the reports, they believe that I took 50 to over 100 pills in my drink concoction. So she used all of these, and it's a really blurry photo because the crime scene, or the people that were coming during the crime, they were taking pictures as they were wheeling me out on a stretcher. So, and obviously the quality wasn't that good. But if you like zoom into this, and I have a photo myself, you can see that there's hydrocodone, lorazepam, hydrocodone, there's a concoction of them. There's like mostly benzodiazepines, and then there is a couple of opioids. And 50 to 100, and I was a small little girl at 10 years old, is wild. Okay, I'm deciding I'm gonna share this photo from the crime scene too, because it's not too crazy. But also when she called 911, so let me backtrack. I'm getting ahead of myself because there's so many moving parts. Back to the premeditation. It showed that she got all of those prescriptions filled within the past 20 days. So that showed premeditation. There was also a homicide and suicide letter that also showed premeditation. And I also have a copy of that too that I can share. But basically it was addressed to certain people in her life and where she wanted to spread our ashes, and that basically she wanted both of us to be dead. Like I said, the problem with that is that she walked out of the house and I was taken on a stretcher and given 3 Narcan reversals. If you guys don't know, if someone overdoses, you typically get 1 Narcan reversal. At 10 years old, I got 3. This is also, if you get triggered by stuff like this, don't look, trigger warning. But this is a picture of the crime scene. As you can see, my arm, oops, I guess I'll make myself smaller. My arm is super, super, super red and swollen. There's other photos that I won't show you guys, but they were trying to give me oxygen. She was just laying there. They were trying to like raise my legs. I don't know if that helps like with blood flow or something, but like this arm was like basically like dead. And yeah, So this is when they realized that I was not doing well. I was basically not breathing. In the initial report that the first investigator wrote, he said that I was unable to be resuscitated at the time of the EMT's arrival at our house. I'm not really sure if, like, I know because of the 911 call that it was showing that, or like it sounded like she was really not doing well, like she was slurring her words a lot and stuff. So I know she took some medication, but I don't know if it was enough to like really take her out too. Honestly, it's neither here nor there. She walked out of the house. I was life flighted to Seattle Children's Hospital because I was about to not survive. And the fact that I survived and had nothing like wrong with me, no damage to my brain, nothing, no health issues, is an absolute miracle. And that's why I share my story. That's one of the reasons that I share my story, because my testimony is so powerful. And the fact that I was saved, and like, I just think that God has a reason for me to be here still. I think there's a reason and there's a purpose. And I think that I've been given such a heavy story as such a weight to share with other people, because while you don't hear every day of someone's mom trying to murder them, there are tons of people who have very sick and unhealthy parents, and they're trying to navigate life now and how to process through that, how to heal from it, and how to create a life of freedom aside from that. And a lot of people don't understand that there is healing and there is so much power in life after really, really traumatic things. And it takes a lot of hard work and it takes a lot of processing, but to be able to share my story to people who might have similar situations is like the whole reason that I want to do this. It's not to keep living in the past, but it's to heal through the story that I have been given and the weight that I carry, so that other people can find freedom as well. And if you're a victim of a crime, if you have a parent who you've suffered neglect from at the hands of, or anything, if you've handled addiction at the hands of your parents, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, I gotta get ready for work, but I will do a part 5 kind of going over my experience with the trial itself.
This is why I just love hearing this come from survivors, because nobody has lived that experience besides them. And this is also why I said at the beginning of the video, where there's something to be learned in so many aspects of this. You know, we've got parents who are also suffering their own demons, and then what that looks like for the child and the effects of that, having to stay, you know, briefly with foster family, or even staying with other family members, or not getting all of the details to protect you. So now we are going to hear from Kenna about what trial was like.
Okay, so basically, if you don't know, if you are going to be a witness on a stand, you're basically summoned, and it's like a subpoena, so you have to go. And so we got one of these, and we were just prepping for the fact that I was gonna have to testify on the stand. I can't remember if this like came as a shock to me or if this was something I kind of anticipated, but it had been 2 years since the event. So, and at that point in my life, from 4th grade to 6th grade, so much was changing. And so I think it just kind of hit me that, holy smokes, I'm gonna have to go back there. And this was the first time that I was actually gonna have to face my mother since the incident happened. When something like that happens to you and you're basically just forced, I was just forced to move away, move to a different state, start a whole new life, and also be in different types of households. Like, my central nervous system was just shocked, and it's basically like fight or flight. You just kind of have to roll with the punches. So the closer in proximity I got to her and the trial and everything like that, I think it started to really bring things up. And at this point, I was 12 years old, so I'm starting to understand what actually had happened and the gravity of what she did. The narrative stopped being, you know, your mom's just really sick, to your mom tried to murder you. And I had to prepare myself for what it was going to look like to face her, and what it was going to look like to be on a stand in a room full of strangers and a room full of my family, and tell my side of the story for what I remember it being. So anyway, we got the papers, we went. I can't remember exactly what month it was. I could look back and see, but at the time right now I don't remember. that's neither here nor there. We go and we basically, the morning of, I had to meet at the courthouse in this room because I wasn't going to be sitting in on the trial and like walking up like after having heard everything. They wanted to still protect me from like what I was seeing as the victim. So I got placed with a victim advocate, like a social worker, and she was with me the whole time. And then I think that my dad and my stepmom got to like sit with me before, but then they entered the courtroom, so I was just with my advocate. And a little side note on that, she gave me this rock that said believe, and it was basically like this idea that it could be like my little stress reliever. So whenever I was feeling anxious and worried during the trial, when I was on the stand, I could just rub the rock and just kind of ground me and my thoughts and my body. And I still have that rock to this day, so I love her for that. So anyway, when it was time for me to come, I enter the courtroom. I basically entered from this side door. And so as I'm walking up, that is when I see my mother for the first time since the incident happened. It was the craziest feeling, and my body instantly went into panic mode. And the way that my body expresses anxiety is I start to do like a full body shake. Like I get like really, really shaky. And so I remember just sitting there and uncontrollably shaking, and then having this rock and just being like, honestly praying that God would just give me peace the whole time. What was really nice about it, and was such a God thing, was that once I sat down in the stand, so you're like looking out at everyone and I'm kind of elevated and the judge is to my left, but the scribe, or I don't even know what they call them, but the people who are like typing everything that they hear, they were in like the perfect line of vision to block my mom's face from me. So she was trying to kind of go like this to see me, but thankfully I was able to just like look forward. I found a face in the audience, which was my brother. I don't know if you'd call it an audience, but in the courtroom. And I remember he just was like, you can just look at me. So I just looked at him when I was speaking most of the time to kind of just ground myself, and I didn't even have to like look at her. So as court goes, if you know or you don't know, the defense gets a turn and the prosecution gets a turn. So the really frustrating part was that the defense attorney really pissed me off. It was my understanding, like obviously I'd never been in a situation like that, and at that point I don't really know if I'd ever watched movies on it either, but it was my understanding that they were going to ask me about the events, like from start to finish of the day, and then I was kind of going to get a better understanding of like questions from there, but I just thought that would be different than it was. But I remember that he was so focused on the movie that I was watching before she gave me the medicine. So when I got home, I went into her bed and I started watching a movie. I thought that I was watching The Devil Wears Prada, but in my initial interrogation video, interrogation video, I had told the investigator that I was watching Nanny McPhee. And to me at that point, I'm like, why are we talking about this? I now understand he was basically trying to invalidate me as like a witness, which is really frustrating, mostly because he wanted to like prove that maybe I had been influenced by my dad's side of the family, or that my memory wasn't as good as it was, or like maybe my testimony isn't super valid because I'm a kid and I don't remember much. So that was very, very frustrating. I'm not kidding you. He took probably 15 to 25 minutes just on this single question and kept doing the wraparound of like why it wasn't real. What I mean by that is like at one point they even had to have the entire jury like leave the courtroom. The prosecuting attorney and the defense attorney came up to the stand. They had a whole little talk or whatever. The jury left. They brought out my initial interrogation video and showed me where I said that I was watching Nanny McPhee. So basically it was just asking me a bunch of questions on the stand that I didn't feel like were relevant, and that was trying to like, I don't know, basically invalidate me as a credible witness. But one of the things that he asked me that I was really proud of, that I will never forget, that I feel like I handled really well, was, does your mom care for you? Into which I responded, well, care in what way? Do I think that my mom cares about me? Yes. But do I think she cared for me like a mother should? No, I do not. And I kind of continued to elaborate on that, about like how my life was living in the household and the things I started to realize were really unhealthy that I didn't back then when I was 10 years old. But now being out of that, I started to realize how unhealthy it was. So that was a really good thing, and I feel like I was really proud of myself because it was like the first moment that I felt really empowered in like the individual that I was and that I was becoming. And even though someone was trying to intimidate me when I was on the witness stand for being a victim of my mom trying to kill me, I was still able to like speak my truth and say, I don't know, say in front of everyone how I was treated when I was just a child. Okay, I came to park so I could finish the story. I want to like also have a little side note here is that when you are a victim of a crime, you think that actually when you're not a victim of a crime, you think that the legal system is doing everything that it can to protect you and to be there for victims. And while there were people who were there for me, such as my advocate and my social workers, a lot of what I've realized with the court system is that it's very corrupt, and I don't understand how anyone could try to make a victim of a crime, especially one with so much hard evidence that she even admitted that she tried to kill me, that people could try to make me feel bad or feel invalidated for the sole purpose of trying to make their client feel better. That to me was just the biggest, I don't know, mind-blowing thing about the whole situation. And it really made me have a different perspective on defense attorneys because I did not like the way that that man made me feel. And I know he was just trying to do it to prove a point, and I get that, but it was awful, and I hope no one has to, like, it makes me feel, I don't know, it just makes me feel so icky. So if anyone has ever been a victim of a crime themselves and have had to go up on the witness stand and endure something like that, my heart goes out to you, because that was one of the scariest things and most intimidating things I've ever had to do, especially being a 12-year-old. Now I look back and I see 12-year-olds now and how little they are and how innocent that they are. And I think I can't believe that I had to do that when I was that age. It just doesn't seem crazy. I've always felt like I'm older than I am because I had to grow up so fast. I endured so many different things, but now I see the innocence of how young a 10-year-old is and how innocent a 12-year-old is. And the fact that I had to go through this stuff at that age is like actually mind-blowing to me. So anyway, moving on, once I was finished, they escorted me out of the room and then they took like a little like recess for court, and I got matched back up with like my brother and my dad and my stepmom, and everyone said like, you did such a good job, I'm so proud of you. And then we were like walking out in this hallway, and there was this whole glass wall basically, and my brother saw my mom coming, and so he went over in between us because we were basically just gonna pass by with just nothing but glass in between us. And it was just so wild because he was trying to shield me. That's just who my brother is, and like he's always just been a protector, and he didn't want there to be like any words exchanged or her to like yell or do anything crazy, which she didn't, but she did try to stare and look. And as chilling as it is, like just her stare can make me feel a certain way, or used to make me feel a certain way. So anyway, after that, I honestly think I disassociated. Like, I don't really remember what we did. I don't remember if we went and got food. I don't remember really leaving Port Angeles. Like, I don't remember anything after that. I just remember the wait until the sentencing. Also, if you've never been a part of a trial or anything, the amount of time that it takes is absolutely asinine. Like, the fact that it took 2 years to get to that point was crazy. And during that time, so initially she was in jail, and then she got out on house arrest, and so she was just like living a normal life for the 2 years before the trial. So she was able to like just do what she wanted. And I mean, she was on house arrest, but we live in such a small town that like there's a certain radius that you have to go, like that you have to stay within or whatever, but like our town's so small. So I don't know exactly what her life was like during that time, but I remember feeling so eerie about it. Like, she just gets to like live her life. And actually, one of my best friends, her mother is or was close with mine, and so she remembers like how I just wasn't there one day, and like then she was still around my mother, and she was like, that's just, it's so strange to me that I was still allowed to be around your mom when she had just done that to you. So like we talk about just that time period in between her being booked in jail, them starting the investigation, her getting out on house arrest, and then the 2-year wait it took for the trial and the sentencing. It's just crazy. So then I don't really remember how long it was until the sentencing actually happened, but I do remember the sentencing day. So I was told that I was supposed to write a letter to the judge, basically, and like the jury and stuff, basically stating like my piece and like what I was hoping for with the sentencing. I think I asked for enough time for me to be, or for my sister to be out of school. So I definitely asked for more than 20 years. You basically, like, I got to write a letter. I think my dad wrote a letter as well, just like pleading to the court, like, please give us enough time to like get into our adult lives, for my sister to get into her adult life, so that we don't have to deal with her being out during that time. I wish that I had that letter, but I don't even know if that letter exists. It might be like in the court documents. So as I continue to like get more information and more evidence from both the court and the initial investigation, I will share that with you guys too. I'd be really interested in hearing what I wrote in that letter. But anyway, we went to my uncle's law firm. I was in Idaho at this time. It had been a few months since, and I read that letter on like a conference call, and then my dad read his, and then I think we waited, I don't know, I feel like the sentencing was that day. Like, I think that they heard our letters, and then they made a decision, like the judge made a decision on sentencing based on the jury's verdict. So initially, my mom got sentenced with attempted murder and neglect of a child. Hold on, the sirens were going crazy. But because of double jeopardy, and because it was attempted murder of a child and neglect of a child, like, she couldn't be charged with the same things at the same time or something. I don't know. I still don't really understand. So she got to serve both things at the same time. So instead of like 20 for both or whatever it was, she only had to serve 12 years. There was other stipulations at the sentencing that she was not allowed to be around anyone under the age of 18 without parental consent. There was the no contact order for life that was put in place by the courts in regards to just me, not my other siblings, but just me. And then there was like other stipulations about like parole once she got out, but that was basically the gist of things. So it was 12 years. And unfortunately, she got out with good behavior and only served 9. So currently my mom is out of prison. This video is about to wrap up, so I'll kind of go into depth in the next part about just kind of the wrap up of the case and all that they found during the trial. I'll actually get one of her appeals and read that.
So basically the defense for Kenna's mom was that this was all due to a history of complex depressive and anxiety disorder. And I just want to read through the case summary that I found online here. So they said, throughout the second half of 2006, Miss Marchie, that's Kenna's mom, suffered from major depressive disorder, borderline personality disorder. In addition, Miss Marchie had a long and complex history of anxiety disorders documented over a period of about 10 years. They alleged these symptoms worsened in the days and weeks leading to Christmas 2006. After several days of acrimonious telephone calls between her and her ex-husband regarding their daughter, McKenna is her full name, visit with her father, Miss Marchie crushed a variety of prescription medications and dissolved them in 2 glasses of juice. We know from Kenna originally it was like she was just trying to get her down the water. Miss Marchie gave McKenna 1 glass to drink while she drank the other. Sometime later, Miss Marchie regained consciousness and was able to call for medical assistance. Medical personnel were able to revive both McKenna and Miss Marchie. In a statement to police detectives while still in the emergency room, Miss Marchie explained that she did it because McKenna's father was so abusive. And Kenna goes through and like talks about this kind of being why, but then we'll get into a little bit later about the complete lack of accountability. Well, that also is just showing lack of accountability, but you know what I mean. And I'm not saying that lightly because there was like physical abuse or anything. They had been apart, and then she's just saying back and forth with the correspondence, like just the tension between separating, he's moved on, has his girlfriend or new wife, and then wanting to take Kenna to Disneyland and stuff like that. You know what I mean. So the defense was that she lacked the capacity to commit the crimes charged, and several people testified that in the 6 months leading to Christmas, her mom had become withdrawn, markedly less reliable, and would often not leave her home or even get out of bed. This is relatable for someone. If you're new here, I talk openly about mental health and just like my mental health relation, and I think that it's important to talk about it and relate where I can. I also have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Getting that diagnosis, though, I don't know if anybody else has been, and then you can relate to this. But for so long, I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I had a complete breakdown. This was like, oh my gosh, like 12 years ago. And it was like finally having that diagnosis and hearing about it, and then like learning about my triggers and, you know, past trauma and what could trigger me for that to just intensify. It was like a huge weight that was lifted off of me. And I was like, oh, I felt like I could manage and make sense of why I was acting that way. I didn't understand why. I didn't know how to navigate emotions, and everything was just like either, and I think that's why it also gets misdiagnosed sometimes as borderline personality disorder as bipolar disorder, because usually when you hear about bipolar, it's like extreme highs and lows, right? And so yeah, in that sense, it's kind of similar, but there's like so much more to it behind the scenes. But it made me feel so much better because I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Now we can go from here, and then I can, you know, talk myself through being like, this is just kind of a little bit of an outrageous reaction to this situation. Let's figure out how that we can just like control this and pull this back a little bit. So it does frustrate me, and I've said this so many times on the channel when we use the mental health, and I get that we need to, and especially like in a trial situation, understand like where it was, what was going on, and give a little bit of a backstory. But all it does for me is hurt, like, because it's continuously like you just like blanket these people into the mental health and then just be like, that's why it happened. Whereas there are, you know, wonderful mothers out there who deal with this on the daily and wouldn't dream of doing something like this to their children, you know? So even prior to getting diagnosed, like I could never. And you'll understand why I'm being a little bit tough because of the lack of accountability that's gone on afterwards. So it says in July 2006, Miss Marchie was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. This on top of a long, complex history of anxiety disorders documented over a period of 10 years. The medical records demonstrated a worsening of symptoms in November and December 2006 with increased doctor's visits, increased time away from work, weight loss, and generally low level of daily functioning. This progression of symptoms made Miss Marchie more emotionally and psychologically fragile and reduced her ability to full reason and in decision-making and problem-solving. Dr. Stephen Melson testified his evaluation of Miss Marchie and reviewed a contemporaneous. If you ever want to feel not smart, just watch one of my videos and watch me try to, or if you want to feel smart, watch one of my videos and try to see me read. Medical records that led them to the additional diagnosis that Miss Marchie suffered from borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is a pattern of instability in interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affects and marked impulsivity. Dr. Melson explained borderline refers to as the area between psychosis and neurosis. Dr. Melson explained Miss Marchie's mental health would lead her to form very tight bonds with those around her, such as her daughter, and would cause her to be unable to see such person as separate from herself. This in turn would cause a lot of equivalence between instinct to rescue herself, preserve herself, escape from threatening environments, and the same kind of decisions and acts for her daughter, meaning like she couldn't see 1 and 2 like up the same. So if like she was experiencing this, she's also projecting that onto Kenna. And Kenna did mention this, you know, like from her perspective of what that was like as a child, obviously not understanding like the disorder aspect behind it, but being, you know, like extreme dependence on each other, the co-sleeping. And then that's not just like being instilled from her as a child wanting to be around her mom, but her mother's codependence on her. Because of Miss Margie's particular vulnerabilities to safety and security, her perception of the outside world and particular individuals within that world as being threatening, the prospect of a conflict, a disagreement, a fight, a legal maneuver, telephone call where there's a conflict, and numerous interactions with people who are highly valued, not necessarily all positive, by this sort of person at this moment would have much greater effect than on the average person. Miss Margie's mental health would lead her to view suicide as a survival mechanism, and because of her inability to view Kenna as separate, that conclusion would reach to her daughter as well. Based upon his diagnosis of Miss Margie and his review of the relevant facts, Dr. Melson formed the opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Miss Margie did not have the capacity to premeditate the intent to commit murder or assault. So my issue, and then my very non-professional opinion, is that I just see that the act of the letter that she typed out and that was found, the last will and testament that she had, that to me in itself just like seems premeditated and planned, especially based on their last conversation prior to Kenna coming home from her dad's house, like being like, we'll see. And then her just knowing like something was off, and her mom being like, well, yeah, when we get home, like you'll get some medicine. And then not letting that go. On top of that, it's also the things that she has done since sentencing. But prior to that, I want us to listen to Kenna read the last will and testament. You'll notice when you're listening, it's very wild how many times you're just going to hear like, I want me.
Okay, so right now I'm going to read the last will and testament, and I have to cut out some parts because I'm just wanting to protect some people's privacy, names, stuff like that. But also, so if I have to cut out things, that's just what I'm going to do. So you won't get the full effect, but you'll get some. Okay, to whom it may concern, December 25th, 2006. This is the last will and testament for my mother's name. First of all, I want to start by saying that in all caps, no one in my immediate family is to come into my home at any time. The only ones allowed after my passing are the following. I'm also prefacing, if you haven't seen my videos, my mother walked out of the house because she didn't take enough medicine to harm herself. I was life-flighted to Seattle Children's Hospital and in a coma for a couple of days. I was given 3 Narcan reversals. So, it's really hard because a lot of people say, oh, well, she was trying to also take her own. And I have a hard time with that narrative, but that's what is shown and you will kind of hear in this letter. I want McKenna and I cremated as soon as possible, and for all of you to take us to the spit and spread our ashes. Dad might not make it, but that's okay. I want no service of any type. I'm not going to say the name, but I'll just say my brother is allowed to take anything that he feels he will need in the future. Everything from his room, all of the food can be taken, and any DVDs that he wants, and give the rest to my sister. And when I say it's mine, it's not hers. He knows the code to my email. I would like an announcement sent out to everyone since they are spread all over the place. The telephone code is just that you dial the number and then the PIN is blank. I don't suppose that my sister will need much. Please give her all of the Christmas presents and all of the movies and DVDs. Please sort the pictures and give each of them ones of all of us. Please sell everything else and put it into a savings account. If people want to send anything, they can send it there. I have a check coming from work and an income tax that may help pay for any expenses. Selling my car should get some money as well. Okay, now in this part, she addresses certain people, like and I'm not going to say the names, but I'll just say, I'm actually just going to skip the two that's for certain people because I just want to protect the privacy. This one is to my dad. You are such a horrible person with so many abusive behaviors, and I'm afraid of what would have happened to McKenna if I didn't take her to heaven. She is finally, after 10 years, safe from you and your mental and physical abuse. This was her narrative. I'm just reiterating that. Cheryl, which is her mom, my grandma. You got your wish. You have despised me for 41 years, and I'm the child you never wanted and was always jealous of and actually hated. You told me that several times on the phone. Imagine screaming at a grown adult in front of their children because she snuck half an oyster. What kind of person does that? Which the irony is crazy. She addresses a couple other people and then says, to all of you, thank you and God bless you for helping me. After 41 years, I can take it no more. I made the mistake of thinking I could depend on her boyfriend at the time. I needed him the most and he chose alcohol. Sound familiar? Please forgive me for the pain. I know this is not an easy task. I love you and I will see you again one day. So there's that. It's really frustrating because just knowing that she was able to walk out of the house, it's like, it puts me in a weird position of like, did she really try to take enough medicine for herself in this, or was this just a stunt? Did she really think that I would be able to not make it? Or like, it's just a really weird thing. I've seen a lot of people questioning that and like have questions themselves, like, why was it just you? Or it sounds like it was her as well. And I don't know, I've just come to the conclusion myself that she didn't take enough because she was constantly taking that much medicine and my little body couldn't control it. And so like kind of what I've come to is like she kind of came out of her manic and realized that she was still breathing and coherent and like knew that feeling and knew that I was not doing well, and that's why she called. But okay, in the next video, I'm gonna read the certification for probable cause, but I kind of just want to like debrief what I have shared already and kind of like unpack it a little bit. So I also have seen people talk about like how she became manic and it sounds like she was really jealous of my father and all of that kind of stuff. So in here she talks about like the abuse that she endured at the hand of my father, and well, I can't really talk a ton on that, and I'm not sure if I want to. I do know that their relationship was extremely tumultuous, and I do know that my dad has struggled with his own mental health and addiction his whole life as well, which a lot of you guys have asked about. I'm still coming to a place of what I'm comfortable with sharing on behalf of my dad, and since this is kind of focused on my case, not going to go too much into that, but they had a really tumultuous relationship and she really hated my dad. I think a lot of you are right. I think she was really jealous about the Disneyland trip. I think that there was a combination of things that kind of aided in her manic during this time. However, it wasn't just a split decision to do this act. During the court, there was a lot of evidence that showed that there was a lot of premeditation. So the medicine being filled all within the past 20 days. Her even writing this letter shows that like when you just snap, it is truly just a snap, and mental health professionals will explain that. And this was very methodical and thought out. There were phone calls made, there was this written, there was the prescriptions filled. There was a lot of different things that showed that this wasn't just a split of the moment snap. And also in the 911 call, it does show like kind of the reasoning why, and how she said, well, she didn't know she took it, and she came back from her dad's, and it's kind of this narrative she created that she didn't want me to go to my dad's because he was super abusive. I will say my dad never physically abused me, and so when I was in the hospital, I wasn't able to see anyone because that was kind of the narrative she told them. And that's why I had to go into a foster family when I got released from the Seattle Children's Hospital. So It's kind of like a lot of layers to that. Whether she experienced the abuse or not, I can't speak on, because I don't have like physical memory of that. I know that they both would scream and yell at each other on the phone and all of that, but as far as like physical abuse towards me at this point to like my 10-year-old self, that was not the case. So that was like her defense. In her mind, for a while, she was trying to say that she was saving me, which is really crazy because my dad never hurt me. It's kind of like her idea in her head. She's also mentioned that it was an act of God to save me, what she did. And I can go into that more later, but I had a caseworker come and say, you will never get your kids back, to her face. And she was not happy about that. But she never got her kids back.
Kenna's mom was ultimately convicted of attempted first-degree murder and first-degree assault of a child, and she was sentenced to 12 years. Now, she's already out. She only served 9. And there is a period that Kenna talks about where she did see and speak to her mom after sentencing. She explains how complicated that was for her. Again, like just like another important reminder that there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes and people who are affected long term. So she, I get it. She remembers this mom that is hands-on, who used to take her to do fun things, was present, and she just like kind of wanted to hold on to that part of those memories and just wait for, something to switch and that person come back. And Kenna explains that it was through her trying to give her mom a chance to just work through the trauma, working through her own trauma, that she realized, okay, like I'm now realizing what actually happened to me, and my mother has no intentions of taking full responsibility for what she did, and even basically didn't even believe in her own defense at trial. So after she was sentenced, Kenna's mom appealed her sentence, and this is just wild to me, okay? So let's go through this. The appeal was in like a complicated legal jargon sense, but in a nutshell, they believed that double jeopardy was committed because she was charged with attempted murder as well as assault, but due to her diminished capacity, they argued that those should not have been sentenced as separate acts, even though they were to be served like concurrently, not consecutively anyways. But I guess like I understand from the legal aspect of just being like whatever's in writing, there can be, ramifications later on during the line. But this is, they were arguing this. So the argument was Miss Marchie's convictions of both attempted murder and assault violate double jeopardy. So they say a single act cannot give rise to multiple punishments absent a clear statement of legislative intent. The applicable rule is that where the same act or transaction constitutes a violation of two distinct statutory provisions, the test to be applied to determine whether there are two offenses or only one is whether each provision requires proof of an additional fact which the other does not. So because proof of attempted murder necessarily proved first-degree assault of a child, Miss Marchie's convictions for both violate double jeopardy protections. So they're saying essentially like, okay, well, we're saying that she attempted to kill her, but then we're also saying that there was like an attempted assault. Those are, to me, I'm understanding like the argument, but it's also like, well, she was, in the same sense she was assaulted. Like, freaking, can you imagine doing that to your child? Anyways, I get it from a legal standpoint, but not really. So they're saying because proof of attempted murder necessarily proved first-degree assault of a child, Miss Margie's convictions for both violate double jeopardy protections. Here the state told the jury Miss Margie committed attempted murder when she dissolved the pills and gave the glass of juice to McKenna to drink. The assault, the state urged, was committed when Miss Margie caused her, Kenna, to take poison. Oh, okay. The trial court recognized, although not completely, the overlap of the two charges, concluding they arose from the same criminal conduct and noting they're sort of the same act. Well, I understand what they're saying. Like, yeah, the assault would have been like that, and the intention was to dissolve them and make them. The frustrating point for this is just like, you got 12 years for trying to kill your child. Like, are we really going to appeal and like put everybody through this again? Your daughter having to relive things if this goes to like another trial. So that's what's really frustrating, because I get the legal side of things, but then when you hear like Kenna's mom truly, like how she really felt about the diminished capacity argument to begin with, it makes this whole thing like really frustrating, not only to waste the court's time, money, but also to re-traumatize Kenna. So I'm going to let her talk a little bit about the diminished capacity appeal and her mom emailing her saying that she doesn't have anything wrong with her. Like, there's no mental health issues.
All right, guys, let's get into it. So this is the appeal that I found, and it just kind of goes over some facts that I may have missed, or I don't know. I just think it's a really interesting piece of evidence. So let's go. So it kind of, I kind of cut out most of this part, but Marshy insisted that MH is me, they can't put my name in there because I was a minor at the time, drank a cup of water containing medicine to cure a toothache that MH had earlier complained about. Report of proceeding, blah, blah, blah. The medicine was actually a potent drug cocktail that quickly rendered MH unconscious. When McKenna, I'm just going to say my name. When McKenna became unconscious, Marshy went to her computer and assessed a document titled Last Will .doc, which I have that, so I will be sharing that in an upcoming part. So if you want to know that, keep listening. Keep watching. At 2:05 a.m., Marshy called 911, which I also have the 911 call for, to report that she deliberately gave MH a potent drug cocktail. Emergency personnel found McKenna unconscious and unresponsive. Like I said in a previous video, I was unable to be resuscitated. She remained at a decreased level of consciousness for several hours and began responding only when she was administered a third drug reversal agent. The state charged Marshy with attempted first-degree murder and first-degree assault of a child under RCW, blah, 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 blah. At trial, Marshy argued that she did not have the requisite mens rea to commit the offenses due to diminished capacity. As evidence of her diminished capacity, Marshy introduced expert medical testimony and proffered lay testimony from her friends and family who had observed her physical and mental health deteriorate in the months before the incident. Oh, that was a mouthful. She was emotionally and psychologically fragile, which reduced her ability to fully reason and function. When Marshy heard that McKenna relayed disparaging comments made by her stepmother, her emotional state deteriorated further, substantially impairing her ability to form the intent to commit murder. I'm just going to keep going and then I'll share my thoughts. The state's rebuttal medical expert opined that Marshy suffered from personality disorder not otherwise specified. The state's expert saw no evidence suggesting that Marshy was unable to act intentionally on the night of the incident. The jury convicted Marshy of both crimes, and the trial court imposed a mitigated sentence of 12 years confinement. The court noted that Marshy had done something atrocious, but mitigated the sentence because she called 911 and because there were some mental health reasons that at least explained, not excused, but at least explained some degree of what might have occurred. Mind you, this is part of her appeal, so she appealed this whole thing, which she did multiple times throughout the duration of her imprisonment, and she was always working on something to say that the court messed up or that she didn't get a fair trial or that blah, 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 blah. She only got 12 years for attempted murder, girl. Sit with it, okay? And she ended up only serving 9. So anyway, I'm gonna pause here before I share more. Couple of thoughts from me. It's so wild that their whole defense was diminished capacity, because years later, she ends up sending me these emails, which I also have the emails and I can share. If you're an OG follower, you have heard me share these on my lives. But in one of her emails, she basically said, I in no way, shape, or form have any form of mental illness. And the experts in here laugh at the fact that people think I do, which is crazy, because her whole defense was diminished capacity, and that she was trying to talk about the personality disorders that she was diagnosed with, borderline, bipolar, plus her drug use, all of that kind of stuff. But now she says that it was just a drug-induced psychosis. So which one was it? To me, it's really frustrating because obviously someone has to be insane in order to be able to do something like this. Of course, there's going to be a factor if you're doing drugs and you have mental illness. There's going to be a heightened level of manic that happens, and all of that, like, people aren't thinking rationally. However, like, there's addicts everywhere. I've come in contact with them. I have them in my family that don't try to murder their own child. So I think it's just wild and completely unsafe that she still doesn't think that she has anything wrong with her. But I'll also get into that stuff in a later part too, because the emails that she has sent me, the state that she's in mentally, it's crazy. But let's keep going. So basically this part of it, it's just like, as a defense, diminished capacity allows a defendant to negate the culpable mental state element of a crime by showing that a given mental disorder had a specific effect on which his or her ability to entertain that mental state was diminished. Again, if you've seen a previous video, there was also many signs of premeditation, so that also was a huge factor in her sentencing, because she had gotten all of those pill bottles refilled within the past 20 days that she used. I think there was some footage from Safeway that they used in the trial as well. She wrote the last will and testament, so all of those kinds of things shows that it wasn't just a snap, that she was methodically thinking about this. Okay, a couple of other little tidbits because people have asked. So the concoction was an assortment of prescribed medications such as lorazepam, clonazepam, trazodone, which are all central nervous system depressants, and hydrocodone, a narcotic, analgesis? I don't know how to say that. Which they believe that I had 50 to over 100 pills in my drink. Okay, so this kind of goes into her sentencing and why she only got 12 years and the whole double jeopardy and what she was trying to appeal. Marshy's conviction may also have encompassed the same criminal conduct. Same criminal conduct means 2 or more crimes that require the same criminal intent are committed at the same time and place and involve the same victim. So basically, because she called 911, that was like the main reason that saved her from not getting 20 plus years. And then also, the whole double jeopardy situation, which is just crazy because I don't know, I feel like I've heard of different stories of people doing a lot less and getting a lot more, and just my faith and what I believe, like, I believe God saved me that day 110%. There is no other explanation for the fact that a 10-year-old, and a small 10-year-old at that, was given over 50 to 100 mild tranquilizers, central nervous system depressants, opioids, and I survived. Like, I had to have 3 drug reversals. I was life flighted. I was in a coma, unresponsive, and I made it out of the hospital after a couple of days with no severe damage to any part of my body. Of course, like, my nervous system and my gut and all of that are gonna hold some sort of trauma. Like, our body keeps score. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but you should totally read it. So like, there are still effects that I feel because I've gone through intense trauma. However, it's a full-blown miracle that God saved my life that day. And it's a little bit frustrating, well, a lot of bit frustrating that just because I survived, she didn't get more time. And it's also really frustrating that the intent and the reasoning behind it is so unclear. Like, everybody asks me, why did she do it? What was the reason? Like, what was her intent? And to be honest, I don't have an answer for that because she's never given a clear answer. Throughout the years, her story changes, the blame gets put on other people, and it shifts. So when I show you the last will and testament, it's like, she'll say that it was my father and she didn't want me to be in my father's harm, and my dad never tried to hurt me. Like, he was not abusive physically, and there was just no means for that defense. Regardless of the type of relationship and dynamic that they had, he had never tried to do anything to me, and so that was just not valid. Her saying it was a drug-induced psychosis, but then at the trial saying that it was insanity or diminished capacity. It's also frustrating because there's never a clear answer. So I don't have a clear answer to give you guys. I am going to share some of the emails that I have received from my mother throughout the years. I have kind of gone back and forth about doing this, but I feel like it's really helpful for anyone who has experienced narcissistic abuse, gaslighting, manipulation. The compilation of these emails, which I only have 3 right now, I wasn't able to go back into my JPay account and access any of the other ones that I didn't save prior to her being released, because that they archive them when an inmate is released. However, when I did the no contact order again in 2020, I did have a couple printed and I did save them. I wish I saved more, but honestly, these 3 really show exactly how unstable she is. And I think for a lot of the people asking, like, why do you still talk to her? Or why did you still talk to her? Why did you still reach out? It's just another layer of, I don't know, understanding for someone like me and in my position, especially if you have a parent who is a narcissist or someone who exhibits a lot of those types of behaviors. You can clearly see that in these emails, which is just like perfect timing for the whole Clinton, Kane, Brooke Schofield drama, because I saw videos of people being like, I was gaslit so much, I almost thought about switching sides, which when you are dealing with people like this, that is exactly how it is. And I'm sitting like wondering why so many people will still talk to her in life. I guess not so many people, but why some people still talk to her and still have a relationship. And it's just that. It's the charisma, it's the gaslighting, it's the manipulation, and it is so easily turned if you don't know about it and you aren't aware that it's happening. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so this one is from December 23rd, 2015. So this is a little context. This is 9 years after the event happened. I am a freshman in college, so it has been about a year since I broke the original no contact order. At this point in my life, I was in college in San Diego and I hadn't really been talking to her a ton. If I wasn't responding, she was sending very erratic emails and she would freak out on me basically. She also was accusing me of like trying to live this life that I shouldn't live, and I was going to this school in San Diego that was like way out of my price range, but like also I'm a freshman in college. I got a lot of scholarships and stuff, and I also don't have a mom or parents to like help guide me through that. So it was like a learning journey in and of itself. So I did not need my mother, who was in prison, to be telling me what I should and shouldn't do. So she started getting really upset and mad, and I can't really remember exactly why, but she sends this email at 1:51 a.m. She titles it just M. She doesn't even spell out my name. I was sitting in my room and some thoughts started to come to me, ... like ... I wonder if you and your brother ever think about life before I got strung out on pills. I wonder if our life prior to all of that counts for anything. I wonder if when you are talking to people about what happened to you, you stop and try to look at it from my perspective. Do you take into account that it was never my intent to hurt you or myself? Pausing. Just to remind you that this is the 23rd of December, so the 25th of December would have been 9 years of the anniversary of it happening. She goes on. The reality is that we would have both gone to heaven at that moment, and at that second of our lives, that to me was the only way to keep you safe. I don't really understand that either, and I've gone to therapists, in parentheses, only ones with PhDs, and they try to explain to me about the intent and the drug-induced psychotic break. I do not have a major mental illness, McKenna. They laugh here at the topic of that because I, in no way, not on medications, even come close to any diagnosis, with the exception of depression and anxiety. But then again, look where I live. Prison. Please try and read about it if you can. Every time I read this, it's just crazy. Okay, she goes on. I wonder how well you think you knew me when you were 10, what kind of mom I was and what kind of person I was. Who was the woman who spent every second of every minute trying to be a good mom? I realize that I've been out of your lives for 9 years, but that was not a choice that I made. It was a choice that the adults in your lives made for you, your brother, and your sister. Well, your brother made it for himself, and I'm sure with the influence of his father, it didn't help. Crazy to me that 6 months prior to all of this, his father was calling me, telling me that what a wonderful mom I was and what a great person that he was, and that I should have all the credit because he just visited him and didn't parent him, ... I love him so much, and it breaks my heart that there's no forgiveness there. I pray about it a lot. Just some thoughts I wanted to share. No excuses, just thoughts. I love you with my whole heart, and I am so proud of the woman that you are today. ... I want to help you. I just need you to tell me how. If your counselor at school needs to contact me in any way, I am available over the phone or by email. I would love to help you heal. ... Love, Mom. Okay, let's do a little debrief, shall we? First of all, I remember exactly where I was when I received this email. I was going from San Diego to Arizona to spend the holidays with an aunt that lives down there and all my cousins, and my grandmother was meeting us down there from Washington. I remember opening up my phone and seeing the email that basically says, the reality is we should both be gone right now on the almost 9th anniversary. And I remember having a panic attack in the car. The fact that my mother would also say that she in no way, shape, or form has any sort of mental illness is absolutely wild to me. It's wild for the fact that, one, her whole defense was based on the diminished capacity, and two, because who in their right mind would do that to a child? So now it's been 9 years, and she's come to the conclusion that what she did was an act of saving me. And actually, the more I dig into the evidence of this case and the phone calls and different interrogation videos from different people in her life, she truly believed that she was saving me by trying to murder me. And she doesn't think she has a mental health issue, which is a huge reason that I cannot have a relationship with her, because when you're dealing with someone who doesn't believe they have any sort of mental illness and they are still exhibiting behavior that is extremely unhealthy and hurtful and harmful to the people around them, there's just absolutely no way that you can be in contact with them, because they will always be exhibiting behavior like this. Behavior that is sporadic, erratic, and harmful. I mean, this email was sent at 2 a.m. She didn't even title it my name. And again, she's talking about how good of a person she is, how good of a mom she is. And mind you, I don't discredit the amazing life that I had when I was really, really little. Like, I remember up until I was probably 7, like I've said in other videos, I really had a great life. Like, I had everything I ever needed. My mom was pretty active. Like, regardless if there was existing mental health issues before that, I didn't really see that, other than obviously noticing some narcissistic behaviors now that I'm out of it and now that I'm old enough to like kind of see it. But truly, I do appreciate those times in my life and I cherish those times in my life. But that does not discredit the many, many years after having to deal with her addiction, having to deal with her mental health issues, having to deal with her in prison, like the inconsistent behaviors that have continued to hurt me and a ton of people around me.
Okay, so we're just playing the one email that she read from her mother from jail, like just taking absolutely no accountability whatsoever. There are others on Kenna's TikTok that you can go and listen to. She's also like she's just wonderful. She's going through so much. I think she's also going through. I have it's in my saved tab right now to look, but I saw that she's going through like her like memory boxes and stuff like that. So go follow her TikTok. She's so well-spoken, lovable, and like I said, relatable to so many people, not just because of this one aspect that she's sharing, but like the layers behind it. She updates a lot. She's got like the healing process. There's home videos and just like, I don't know, there's, even though it's something so awful, there's like this hope and inspiration that she shares of like life after. She's also a photographer and is amazing. girl, when it is vow renewal time, you better know I'm going to be hitting you up, okay? Her photography is called Captured by Kenna. And yeah, there's so much more to her, you know, and so much beauty to see. And like and I love the fact that like she captures people's love and stuff like that. And she's come out of something just like very heavy. And, you know, she's just beautiful and spreading beauty and love and very talented.
Hi guys, it's Kenna, and I am answering some of the most asked questions about my mom trying to murder me. I start each video like that because if you have seen my videos and maybe you haven't followed along, I want you guys to know exactly who it is and what I'm talking about and what this video is going to be about. However, I do want to preface something. I think a lot of people, well, actually not a lot of people, but some people might be like, why is this the only thing she's talking about? Blah, 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 blah. I just want to say that this is one of the first times, actually this is the first time that I'm ever sharing my story. This year, I've finally come to a place in my life where I've been looking back at the evidence, going to the courthouse, trying to like relive what I went through as a 10-year-old, because now as an almost 28-year-old, it's a lot different and I have a lot different perspective on it. And so I think it's just really important to be able to share this with others. What I'm trying to do here is just create a space of vulnerability for other people who have been through really hard things. And even if our stories are not similar in a lot of the ways, I think that everybody or some people can connect with my story in some way, shape, or form. I think by creating a voice and having a voice and being so strong and being able to share my story is going to be able to create courage in other people to be able to find their voice to share their stories. If you've been through really hard things, you know that a lot of the people around you sometimes find it really uncomfortable to talk about, and not a lot of people like to share on the hard things that we go through because they haven't processed it, or it makes them uncomfortable, or it sheds a light on the fact that life is really not perfect. And I just want to break that barrier and give people the voice and the courage and the wisdom to say that the things that happen to you are not you, but you can create a lot of freedom in sharing the things that have happened to you. So like my whole life, I'm not going to be just talking about this in a way of like a victim mindset, even though I was a victim of a crime. I am sharing this and answering your questions and kind of diving into this, one, for my own healing journey, and two, because the story doesn't stop at what happened to me. And I don't think anybody's story stops at the worst things that have happened to them either. The whole point of this is to show the freedom and the life after what happened to me. So like, that event happened and I went through really hard things for a majority of my childhood and into my early adult life. But now I've created the life that I've always wanted to live, and I'm starting to find a lot of freedom and a lot of healing in that. So I just think that walking through this journey with all of you guys and kind of like reliving it, rehashing it, like it's not a way to just stay stuck in that, but it's a way to show that there's freedom and that there's healing and that there's growth after that, and that we can all do really hard things and come out and create a life for ourselves. Even if maybe as a child you weren't able to have that life, or you feel like your childhood was robbed from you, we have the ability as adults to create the life we've always wanted. So that's just prefacing that, because I feel like that's really important. And maybe some people who are seeing my face are like, why is she talking about this? Or why does she keep talking about her mom trying to murder her? Well, while I am doing that, I'm also sharing a much bigger and brighter story and testimony and all of it. So let's get into the questions. Okay, so one of the questions was if I have had contact with my mother since. And a bunch of questions after that have been like, well, why would you contact her after? I thought there was a no contact order. Like, I think that was a little bit confusing in some of my stories, so I'm going to clear that up. So after the trial, there was the sentencing, and in that, there was a no contact order for life put in place by the courts towards my mother from my perspective, and she was not allowed to contact me for the rest of my life. However, when I was 18, I realized that I could break that if I wanted to. What I didn't realize is that when I went to the court to go through that process, I wasn't ever able to put that back in place, which I wish the courts would have told me, because I could use that now. However, I wouldn't change a thing, because every part of my journey has just taught me everything that I needed to know about her. But hindsight 2020, I really wish the courts would have done a better job of letting me know when I was 18 that I was never going to be able to get a permanent no contact order again, because those are pretty serious and pretty hard to get in the first place. So yeah, there's that. When I was 18, I broke it because I really wanted to face my mother face to face in prison. I ended up going and seeing her for the first time, and it was a really crazy experience. It was like talking to a stranger that you've known your whole life. And that was the first time that I had spoken with her since before she gave me the medicine on Christmas Day. After that, we had some contact back and forth. She would write me emails. That's where a lot of the questions, like how was she emailing you? Wasn't that breaking the no contact order? At that point, there was no contact order because I had gone to court and lifted it. So she was able to email me through a JPay account, which, if you guys don't know, it's just when people are in prison, they use like a third-party account that you have to basically pay for each email back and forth. So she would email me back and forth. Sometimes I would respond, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes the emails were nice, sometimes they were really, really awful, which I have been trying to contact JPay to get all of my emails back, because once a inmate is released, all of those get deleted basically, or like they archive, and I can't access them anymore. However, I did print a couple of emails that she had sent me that were really awful when I tried to get a no contact order again, and I have some of those, so I can read them to you guys. But anyway, that's basically the gist. So we had contact on and off for quite a few years. I would go periods where I'm like, do not ever contact me again. Then I would kind of go through this change of heart and be like, God, like what, like, please heal me, work through me. And I would feel like I should, like, there were still more questions in me. So I'd reach out. And I also just think that that's part of like that mother wound, is like, it's like I wanted my mom to be my mom so bad. And I remember that little girl needing her mom and wanting her mom. But then there was also this disconnect of knowing like this person is never going to be a healthy human being. There will be a complete lack of boundaries always, because she isn't getting the help that she deserves. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. Not that she deserves, but she's not getting the help that she needs because she doesn't identify with having any mental health issues, which is wild because her whole defense was based on the fact of diminished capacity. So she was trying to fight so hard that like she wasn't in her right mind. But later she says, I have no form of mental health issues, even though she's been clinically diagnosed with multiple diagnoses. But now she doesn't think that she has anything wrong with her. So she isn't medicated. She's not going to therapy. She's not doing anything like that. So she's just not a safe person. So back in 2020, during COVID, there were a few incidences where I actually had to go back to the court and try to get a no contact order again, because she would not stop harassing me through like third parties. Basically what I mean by that is like, she's very smart and very manipulative and very conniving. So she's not going to like call me up a million times because she knows that that would be like breaking her parole at the time, or like harassing me, or that could potentially turn into a crime. But she's going to do things indirectly to try to get to me to intentionally hurt my feelings. And if you've ever dealt with a narcissist, you know what I'm talking about. But like, she dropped off 9 totes of our stuff as children, like that she had been keeping or whatever, in a storage unit the whole time she was in prison. So she didn't keep a single thing of ours and just dropped it all off at my grandmother's doorstep, had some people drop it off for her, and then labeled each box. 7 out of the 9 of them were for me. 1 was for my sister, 1 was for my brother. And she intentionally labeled them. And then when I took her to court, she tried to say, no, I was just giving those back to my mom. Like, I don't know what she's talking about. Those weren't labeled. Like, lady, I have the totes with the names on them. She also took out of those boxes before she had them delivered every Mother's Day card that I had ever written her before she had gone to prison. So from the time that I could do anything for Mother's Day until 10 years old. She kept them so that she could mail them back to my grandmother's address for me on Mother's Day, which Mother's Day is already a really, really hard day every year for me. So that basically sent me into an emotional panic.
So go check her out, Kenna Renee on TikTok. I will leave a link to her TikTok page. Kenna, the Sippindales love you. We support you. I saw one of your Get Ready With Me's where you mentioned there are people in your life who are not happy with you sharing, and there are people who have suggested that you get over it. So my little, like, I'm just, little disclaimer here, like, if you need me to talk to anybody, like, I'll just have like a little word with them. You're doing amazing, okay? Like, you are brave, you are inspirational, you are literally helping save other people. So as long as you and your mental health are doing okay, like sharing this, you have every right to, and there are a lot of people who support you talking about your experiences, and you're literally doing so much for people you don't even know. So we love you. I love you, my Sippindales. That is it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Till then, make sure to love each other, love yourself. And as I'm saying this, I'm realizing I didn't give you the answer to today's riddle. Also, keep an eye out. I have some exciting news that I'm going to be sharing in the next week or two. Big project that I've been working on with the Elmquist family. So that is coming. Where's our riddle answer? Okay, answer to today's riddle. Quick reminder, I'm not a blanket, yet I cover the ground. A crystal from heaven that doesn't make a sound. What am I? And the answer is a snowflake. Okay, that was really cute. At first I was like, oh, that's a really nice one. And it is still really cute and nice, but then it just was a stark reminder that winter is coming. I thought I was ready for it, and now I'm just like, it came too fast. I'm not. Okay, anyways, I love you. Bye.